Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you to Adrian, who's joined us for a short interview today. Congratulations, Adrian, on Chair of AREF. Do you mind giving us a short intro for those who don't know you, to your industry background and experience?
Sure, and thank you very much for the opportunity. I've been in the real estate industry now for just over 20 odd years. Funnily enough, actually, I started as a civil engineer way back when at university, but now here I am actually more on the real estate investment side. So initial few years of my career was very much actually on advising listed property companies across the globe. But then it's really in the last decade or so that I've actually been working on the fund management side. So most latterly, actually, with Fidelity as their head of real estate solutions.
Excellent, thanks. Can I ask, what are some of the challenges that you foresee for real estate in the next 10 years or so?
Yeah, I suspect we would have been given slightly different answers had this interview happened about 4 or 5 months ago, because who would have thought we'd be thinking about, what the rights of a landlord are going to be in terms of being able to even collect their rent. So I think here in the UK, there's a lot of challenges out there. So clearly, the role of the landlord and its ability to deliver value for our end investors is clearly something that we need to address quite quickly. There's been a lot of change over the last few months in terms of just what the standing of a landlord is, and that's certainly one challenge that we need to address pretty quickly, because it gets right to the core of our being in terms of delivering performance for our clients. The other thing actually is in terms of what's actually going on with our client base, because we've got on the one side the occupiers, our tenants, and we've just talked about that, but then the other aspect is actually our investors who are investing in the funds that we manage on behalf of them. We can't ignore our investor base is evolving, like the world is evolving, and perhaps at a pace that can at times be a bit scary. But I'm a big believer, when things change, there was also just as much opportunity. And for us now, we need to recognise with defined benefit scheme investors actually reducing their exposure to property, but then DC increasing. There's increasingly as well the wholesale retail client base. So trying to understand really what it is that they want from their real estate funds and ensuring that we as an industry can actually deliver that. So those are probably, for me, the two key challenges that we're facing over the few years.
Yeah, as you say, things have definitely been evolving quickly with COVID. What are some of the primary issues for AREF members now and over the next few years in the recovery from the current crisis, do you think?
Yeah, sure. So I think for me, I touched on the first one in terms of just our ability to actually enforce our rights as a landlord. Who would have thought that rent collection levels would be such a key statistic? We're used as an industry to be collecting 90, 95, 99%, and all of a sudden, those have been hit and hit quite hard. And I think there's a role that AREF can play very much in, working and building a consensus view of just how important the role that we play is, because it's not just simply about getting rents from our occupiers, but it's also producing that return, producing that income for a number of our stakeholders, be they pension funds, be they long-term savers, be they your mum and dad saving for their kids' university fees or whatever it might be. So we've got an obligation there to be able to continue to do that. I think that for me is an absolutely crucial area.
Excellent. As the new chair of AREF, what's your vision for AREF for the future?
I don't want to take too much Paul's thunder, because clearly we're blessed at AREF with a slightly new structure, and I must credit Deborah's chairing in the last few years, and the rest of the board in terms of the position that they've blessed us with. There have been a number of things that have changed, particularly, the relationship that has been developed with the Investment Association. I think a lot of the activity that you've seen the AREF group being able to undertake is very much a function of being able to leverage that wider support, particularly around lobbying, government, FCA, Treasury. A lot of that has really been down to that relationship. But as well, we need to be aware that things are changing. AREF came from a place. The world that we're moving toward is quite different, and we need to be able to recognise that. And I think a lot of that means that we do need to then, listen and understand from our members what are the challenges that they are facing, and then developing the right strategy to address those challenges. So certainly from my perspective, that's something that Paul and I and the board will be placing a lot of time and emphasis on over the coming months, listening to us, understanding what it is, and then coming up with a clear plan of action to support that growth, to continue the growth that AREF has been, particularly over the last 10, 15 years. So on that, I'm not really giving you an answer, I have to say, because it is work in progress.
That's great. Are you happy with AREF's current profile, both amongst members and externally? And which areas do you think could be improved, and how do you think maybe that could be improved?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think hopefully our members will see that there's been a significant step change in just the profile that AREF has taken, and quite often crises are thrown at us, and organisations do one of two things. They either melt away or they step up to the challenge, and I'm proud to say AREF has really stepped up to the challenge during COVID-19 crisis. Who would have thought that you're organising 1, 2, 3 webinars almost per week on the most pertinent issues that are affecting our membership? So client communications, the feedback I've received has been very strong. When I just look at the attendance numbers on these webinars, when you're seeing 50, 100 people, and not just 50, 100 people by volume, but actually the type of individual attending, really reflecting the depth and breadth of the industry. I think that's great. So that's certainly something that we want to continue to be able to dynamically adjust. Who would have thought all of our communication is going to be done through Zoom or the equivalent, WebEx, but the organisation has successfully bridged that. So I think we want to be using technology in a way that really serves our membership, getting them timely information, but then also to be that forum in which we can galvanise support around the key areas, the key challenges that we face, and then to be able to then effectively communicate a consistent and considered view to those key stakeholders that really need to understand the challenge we're facing and some of the solutions that we want to see. So we've mentioned the Treasury, the FCA, those two key area ones, but then indeed other organisations as well, who are equally representing different parts of the real estate industry. So I want to see more webinars to be able to have that. I think as well, I think now we've got things to say. When things are fairly straightforward, it's not really the time you don't need to engage very much. But now with the many challenges that the industry are facing, I think that's where it really can step up the difference.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think webinars and using technology to communicate makes things a lot easier. People have been more engaged using video conferences and things, which is great, really.
Yeah.
How do you feel ESG and social impact investing should be part of AREF's agenda going forward?
Yeah. It's interesting because obviously you would have expected me to sort of highlighted that earlier on, and that's not to say it's not important. For me, it's actually intrinsic. It's a bit like saying, what do you do all day, and somebody saying, well, that's actually what we do every single day. For me, that's what ESG is about. I think it's such a core part, such a core intrinsic part of what we need to be doing, that it almost takes it as a given. Now, clearly, we need to be doing more. I think we as an industry, particularly here in the UK, need to recognise that on a global basis, we're coming a little bit from behind. But then, having said that, the acceleration I see from my perspective has been tremendous. And I think being able to continue on that trajectory, and I think it's going to be hugely beneficial for us. So I'm just thinking about my young children. They know more about ESG than I ever did when I was growing up. I'm pilloried if I walk into a shop without my plastic bags in my pockets, etc., etc. So they are the investors of the future. That's how they're thinking, and as a result, we have to be able to say we think the same, we behave in the same way that you expect us to. I think for me, it's absolutely intrinsic to everything that we do.
Yeah, I think this will be a similar answer, but also diversity and inclusion. How do you think that should impact AREF's agenda?
Yeah, well, clearly, the tragedy and the events that we've seen in the last few months have galvanized something which has been going on for a number of years. And so I think, coming back to what our role is, yes, we're an industry group representing real estate funds, but ultimately, what are we actually doing? We're creating a built environment, space for society to live, to work, and to socialize within. That's actually our ultimate purpose. And in that regard, when we say hand on heart that those within that industry are representative of the wider society, I don't think we can. And so, am I suggesting that there are some easy fixes? Perhaps there are some, but we need to recognise that this is a big challenge. It's not unique to real estate. It's a challenge that a number of different industries are facing. But I think there are initiatives already out there, particularly with the IA's 2020, that the board are considering and seeing whether that's something that we can lend our support to and benefit from. But then also, just much like the progress that's been made on gender balance, we recognise that that's another area that has seen some improvement. We need to see more, but collectively highlighting these and really just almost using or showcasing other industries that have had similar challenges and how they've looked to address it. I think that's the way to go about actually seeing long-term meaningful change. But we've got to be, as I said, pragmatic. Coming up with a short-term fix is actually going to perpetuate the problem. This needs to be around about longer-term structural change, and that takes time. But I'm a big believer it's about that drip feed. It's not going to go away. It's where ESG was 5-10 years ago. Look where it is today. I think in a similar way, diversity and inclusion is going to be a similar topic. It needs to be handled in a similar way.
Excellent. Final question, Adrian. How do you see AREF's role changing and developing in the future?
It's a good question. I think there's so many things that we just don't know about, and so I just reflect on my career and just thinking, right, I'm supposed to have only had 2, maybe 3 downturns in an entire working career, and yet I've had 5/6, and I'm only about halfway through it. So I think what that has taught me is don't even try and predict the future, because you're just going to get it wrong. But what you can do is make sure that you are prepared for that change, and that change can sometimes be anticipated, but more often than not can't. And what we need to make sure AREF is ready and prepared for those changes. So that's why I keep coming back to that relationship that we have now with the Investment Association. I think that's a fantastic building block or a foundation stone to really help to shape not just simply the direction, but actually the execution plan of some of these things that we're looking for. around finding a long-term saving solution for which works for our investors, and that we can, as a result, have our fund members actually taking the benefit of. Finding different ways in which we can play a more meaningful and vocal part, for example, in ESG factors, not just within the real estate industry, but actually as part of the broader industry. We can make a meaningful part, and making sure that other stakeholders are aware of that. So these are just some of the ideas we have, and I certainly hope to be able to talk together with Paul about what our plans are. As I said, we're engaging with different members over the coming weeks and months, and then hope to be able to communicate that in a more considered way than I've been able to, perhaps in just last few minutes of this interview.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you for joining me, Adrian, and answering my questions, and we'll undoubtedly be hearing more from you in the coming years.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.